Hello, everyone, and welcome to another version of The Pulse. I'm with Tom Ross here, local author here in Spokane, here to interview about his book, Don't Call Me Jupiter. So, welcome, Tom. Welcome to the
Gosh,
program.
thanks for having me, Connor. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm glad that you're here. How are you doing today? Overall, pretty good?
I'm going to steal a line from George Carlin and tell you that I'm moderately neato, just because it's good to mix it up occasionally.
Oh, yeah. Definitely good to mix up the pot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of pots, oh my goodness. I just skimmed through your book and lots of things, lots of things. So, let's just begin. Tell us about yourself. Where did you grow up and how did it influence your book?
Good question. So, my family started in the Midwest. That's the heartland of America. And it's called the heartland of America because there's no brains there. I'm just kidding. I have lots of family in Ohio and I still love the Midwest. But the joke is people move to either coast. And when my parents got divorced, that's kind of what happened. My dad took off and went to Boston to start his own travel writing business.
Okay.
He became a successful travel writer and photographer, went all over the world. My mom moved west. I think she was attracted to San Francisco in the summer of '69 and the summer of love that was coming up. So they moved to opposite coasts. And I ended up living in San Francisco and a plethora of other places all over, mostly Northern California. From San Francisco, we went to a little town called Shingle Springs that I say in the book was named after a diseased water source. It was the complete opposite of living in the heart of San Francisco, but of course we loved it. From San Francisco, we moved to Fair Oaks, California, which is part of Sacramento, and then eventually to Davis, where we stayed for about 6 years. And that kind of led to where I thought was the right point to start the book. There was a dramatic event that happened in 1974 where my mother all of a sudden announced that we were going to go live with our God family. Lots of people have a godmother or father, but we happen to have a whole entire God family because my mom and her best friends had synchronistic kids. So Peggy had a girl, my mom had a girl. Peggy had another girl, my mom had another girl. Peggy had Danny, my mom had me. Peggy had Annalisa, my mom had Molly. So we kind of grew up with this family in Cincinnati, and then we joined them in San Francisco. And they're a big part of the book as well.
Fascinating, fascinating. And I relate to that part of the book too. My mother and her three other friends, all without being planned, had four children total near around the same time. And
Hmm.
my best friend and I, his name is Dallas, were born legitimately 20 days apart from each other. So I get the synchronicity. It was an accident though, so that it wasn't planned.
Right.
What I'm saying. But fascinating. And I read right after you guys moved, your mom started working in this cook shop, bakery,
Yeah.
right? Right.
So, um, we did complain about living in Davis all the time.
Hmm.
It's flat. I think when you're a certain age, no matter where you're at, you're not happy where you are. And you sort of got that green grass, syndrome where you're like, oh, it'll be better wherever I go. And San Anselmo was far more interesting as far as the people we came in contact with. Peggy was very well connected. She knew people like Sly Stone. So
Really?
my mom and Peggy worked on projects in his recording studio, and we came in contact with a lot of people that, have become well known. And it was chaos living with all in one house with all our god sisters and brothers, but it was also an extension of our family. And even though I got off to a really rough start in San Anselmo, I started to like it more than Davis. And it was about that time that my mother, for some reason, said, that's it, we're heading back to Davis. So she kind of plucked us each out of school
Hmm.
and never really gave us an explanation why. It's a mystery to this day. But that's kind of where the book starts is we returned to Davis, and my brother and my sisters, they're all able to stay with their friends in different houses. But I get stuck in Cliff's garage, which was one of my mother's ex-boyfriends.
Okay.
And so I'm pretty miserable, and it just felt like the right place to start the book because there's plenty of time in the dank, cold garage to reminisce about my family's history.
And it's definitely a fascinating one. Your parents getting divorced, right? and moving to separate coastlines. I mean, like that must be just hard on a kid, especially during the time of the 60s and 70s too. I mean, I could not imagine going
Well,
through.
kids are so adaptable. So the weird thing is when you're a kid, until you start comparing yourself to other families and other lifestyles, you just kind of figure this is the way it is and you do the best you can. And for the most part, I never felt like we were poor or we had less than other people but I did start to notice we were different. And I became very observant and would compare my family to my friends. And I literally started taking notes, knowing that I want to write a book one day because we're dealing with some crazy shit here. And it's not the kind of stuff other
A typical
kids
family
typically
would,
have
yeah.
to encounter. One of the, we weren't always hippies. I mean, hippies, most people become hippies. There's some kind of transition.
They're not. I mean, they're not like right off the bat. You know, I'm
If
right
you're
on board.
born on a commune or a whole earth
Right, that's one
festival,
thing.
right, you're going to start your whole life as a hippie. We started out in the Midwest and we were incredibly straight. We went to church every Sunday. We were very buttoned down. We had kind of the all-American life in suburbia, extremely conservative. We happened to be chosen to be the model family for the oral vaccination that was developed by Dr. Sabin. And so our picture appeared in the paper, and there's a photo of it on the cover of the book and also inside the book. And I felt that was important to show that, you know, we went through this extreme change. And that was really the running theme with my mother. She was all about change. And that message still influences me to this day.
So how did you change, and what sort of changes specifically occurred within your family?
I think even in San Francisco, Peggy was allowed to be more than a hippie than my mother was. So we got taken to a lot of demonstrations. We got to see some really wild stuff as kids. Peggy was very empowering about you have the right to question authority. You have the right to protest. You have the right to do what you think is right for humanity, and no government can get in your way. So it was nice to have that message from Peggy. My mom was married to a very conservative. She happened to have an affair with our next door neighbor in Ohio. He followed us out to San Francisco and they had a kind of a secret wedding. And then my stepbrother came along a year later. So John he didn't like the hippie thing. He wasn't about free speech or anything. He hung on to classic values. So the
Traditional
hippiness
conservative.
sort of had to leak out. And you could see it when John wasn't at home in the kind of music my mom would play, how she dressed. When she was with Peggy, she was a lot different than she was with John. John left 5 of his own kids behind in Ohio, and my mom already had 4 kids at the time. So he wasn't really into kids at all. And he was a really kind of a hard stepdad to have around.
Right. And I mean, without you know, relationships with your father is great and whatnot, but then when you have the divorce and then you have a stepfather come into your, try to step in that fatherly role, it can be difficult probably.
I'm sure.
For any children or any child.
Yeah, it couldn't have been easy for John, but I don't want to give him too much credit either because we were good kids. I look back and I wasn't a rule breaker. I was into doing good at school. All my brothers and sisters were getting good grades. We were good kids, but he didn't give us the time of day. And basically, he didn't give us attention unless we did something wrong, at which point he felt it was his job to
Necessary as a father figure.
more as an authoritarian. So there's lots of stories in the book about how living with John was really difficult and how he was so much different than my mom.
Why don't you give one of those stories for us?
When we were living in Shingle Springs, which is just outside of Placerville in Northern California, in the foothills of the Sierras, we lived on this beautiful ranch. It was called the Diamond D Ranch, and
Beautiful.
there was a feral cat there. And my mom's a nature lover, and she loves all animals. And she befriended this cat that we still couldn't even touch as kids. It wouldn't come near us, but she was able to feed it. And then the cat had a litter of kittens in the barn, and she wanted us to come out there and witness the birth of these cats so we could see the meaning of life. Now you fast forward about 3 weeks or less, and John decided that he needed to drown the kittens to teach us a lesson that life is harsh, that there's not always food for everybody, that one person can't provide for a whole litter, which was crazy. But he ended up putting the cats in a sack. He let us pick one to keep, and then he drowned the rest of the kittens.
Oh my God.
So you have this contrast between this sort of mom who's dying to be more in touch with nature and this authoritarian father figure that was really harsh. Yes, there's a few good things that come out. We had structure while John was around. We had impeccable table manners. I think the nicest compliment he ever gave me was, you're learning to use a fork better. I was petrified to eat salads around him because I was like, do I stab or do I scoop? And I always knew he was watching and that we were never good enough for him. I would like to add that years later, I invited John to a Thanksgiving dinner, and he actually apologized for being so rough on us kids. It was a minor move on his part, but much appreciated. It didn't make up for all the shit he did while we were growing up, but I still felt like it showed some evolution in his maturity as a man to look back and maybe go, maybe I didn't need to be so hard on them.
Yeah, I mean, the ability for humans to look back and to learn upon the mistakes that they made is something that I wish everyone would do.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we don't. And
I've made so many mistakes. I should be a lot smarter than I am, but I do take it upon myself to not be depressed by them, but look at them as growing
yeah,
experiences.
and I think that's what everyone should do. Is like, oh, I made a mistake 5 years ago. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
own up to it,
Yeah.
learn from it. That's the most important thing, and move on.
Exactly.
And one of the things that my sister, my older sister, did to me when I was younger was whenever I would chew gum or whenever I would chew food, she would look at me straight in the eyes and be like, "Chew with your mouth shut," and it just criticized me over and over and over again about to where the point where I did learn
Yeah.
when I was 6 or 7 years old, I would chew with my mouth shut, like when
Right.
I do whatever. And to this day now, when I look at my younger sister, when we're eating together as a family, she chews out loud. I look at her and I'm like, chew with your mouth shut.
So you grew up with sisters too.
Yeah, I have two sisters, a younger one and an older one, and then an older brother. The oldest is
Okay.
the brother. So
I have a younger brother who came along after. It's John's son, but two older sisters and one younger. And I really liked that. I felt like it was great. We were all close in age. I'm really good in the kitchen, but John would never let me help out with anything mechanical. So to this day, I'm not as mechanically as inclined as I'd like to be.
and siblings are definitely, I think, important in any family
Mm-hmm.
because they teach us the important stuff that they've gone through, kind of like
Right.
the parents. But we're so much closer in age that we can grow upon each other and we can.
Practical stuff too.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
Chris would tell me, you can't dance like that. You will scare women away. And she would, go, you got to do this. Bring it in, Tom. Bring it in. And just about how to talk to girls, at that awkward age when you're starting to get interested in girls. I had sisters I could bounce ideas off, and most of the time they'd roll their eyes, but eventually they'd come around and go, this is what you need to do. Just
Yeah, you learn the moves in order to get the girl,
Mm-hmm.
And let's actually jump to today. Or how did you get to Spokane, and what's your life like today?
I had a sister that was living in Carywood, who's up in Sandpoint now.
Okay.
And I was in the Bay Area and working in marketing and advertising, but we'd vacation up here, and I loved the area right away. I had two really young kids at the time and thought, boy, I'd like to raise my kids somewhere else. Typical tired of the rat race story in the Bay Area. But I thought Spokane, it's so cute. It's a cute, darling little town, but I didn't think there were any advertising agencies up here. But it turns out there was an ad market, and I was in a real specific niche, and there was an agency up here that was familiar with my work. So I was able to get the family up here, and I've become sort of a four-season person that loves to visit California, but would never want to live there again.
Naturally,
Yeah.
I mean, for right now too, especially the housing market there, unless you're very wealthy, it's not a good housing market to be in the
Right.
state.
When I first came up here, I was one of those Californians that people were like, oh, we hate you. You're driving up the property value, all this stuff. Well, now I'm one of those Spokanites that sees Californians and other West Siders and Portlanders come up here, and I'm like, oh,
Oh,
you're
you're
killing
driving
me.
up the
You
prices.
know, the locals can't afford to buy a house now and all that.
Yeah, the
But
median price within Spokane has just jumped. I
Yeah.
mean, dramatic. I think the last time I saw a report on it, it was like $380,000 for the median price here in
Yeah.
Spokane. And it's like, for Spokane
Yeah.
of all places, like,
salaries haven't exactly kept up with that.
no, it
Yeah.
hasn't. It definitely needs to change, and hopefully it will with
Yeah.
the economy and so bears on or goes on to the way it needs to be. So, yeah. Any last words you want to say about your book or the
Well,
series
Don't
itself?
Call Me Jupiter is a series, and I don't know. As an author, just when you know that your words, all that work, all that heart, all that energy you put into it.
18 years you were talking about it.
Yeah, it took me an extremely long time to write this book. So I always knew I wanted to write a book. Originally, it was going to be called The Yellow Bus, or Yellow Bus is on the cover. But lo and behold, something threw our family for a very dramatic curve in 1996, and it gave the right platform to launch the book from. Why didn't I start writing it then? I had my hands full with other things. Life throws a lot at you sometimes. It seems to come in waves. But I never let go of the idea that I was going to write a book. So I kept plugging away at it. Yeah, it took about 18 years total to get to that point. I split the book up because initially it was really, really long.
It was going to be one really.
It was going to be one really long book, and as a not known author, I think it would have been a stretch to ask people to read a 600 or 700 page book. So actually, I think it has more impact that it's been broken into three. The first one came out at the very end of February, and I love getting reviews on it. Goodreads is a great place to leave a review, so is Amazon if you buy it there. I took it upon myself to do a audio version of the book, and I read it, which was a real learning experience. I got about halfway through before I really found my groove, and then I thought, I got to reread the first half because I wasn't that good at it. Not that I'm great at it now, but I got a lot better, like anything else. The second book is scheduled to come out on October 21st, so it's not too far away. It's the second book in the series. The first book ends with a very dramatic cliffhangy event. So I think a lot of readers are like,
We'll want
when
to
is
stick
the
around
second?
for the second
Yes.
book. Yeah.
And then I'm hoping to have the third book and complete the series about a year after that. So
Okay, awesome. And it's
October.
available on Amazon and
Yes, the book is available on Amazon. I also have a website if you want a signed author copy. Not that my signature, I have a very nice signature. I worked on it, but who cares, right?
just
I'm a
wait, it'll
nobody.
grow and buy it. You, I guarantee
So
it.
the website is don'tcallmejupiter.com. And if you pre-order the second book, I'll sign it for you. I also have some really beautiful custom bookmarks featuring my sister's art, which I'll put in the book order for you as well. And I just appreciate the feedback, just knowing that the words are resonating with people. I was a notorious late bloomer. I had somebody say, gosh, I could relate to how nervous you felt taking showers in junior high. I was that person too. It was really difficult, but you made it so funny. Now I can laugh at myself. That really brings me a lot of joy, knowing that people are relating to it, connecting with it. So I think that's been my favorite part. Can I add just one more
Oh,
story?
no. By all
Okay.
means. By all means.
So one of the unexpected things that happened were like old college roommates got in touch and were like, "Oh, we're all going to read your book." And so I got to reconnect with some people I hadn't talked to much in the last 10 years. And just having a group Zoom call after they read the book and they wanted to ask me questions was fantastic. If you have a book club, I'm willing to chime in on a Zoom call and you can ask me any question you want. It's really kind of fun. It's interactive. And then the other thing I wanted to say that the very first call, my god sister Claire read the book, and I kind of make fun of a very mild speech impediment she had in the book because there's so much heavy drama going on. I felt like I needed some comedic relief, so I exaggerated it a little bit. And it's something she outgrew and she's still sensitive about as an adult. So she called me on the phone in tears and was like, "How could you make me sound like that?" And I'm like, "You haven't read the second book yet. You don't know what happens to your character." And it's all good now, but it like made me realize that, oh, I got to be very sensitive about how I portray other people. I went for 100% honesty in the book with some exaggeration in some cases.
Naturally.
But Claire and I are all good, and she's looking forward to reading the second book as well.
Alrighty. And Tom Bross's book currently out right now is Don't Call Me Jupiter. And sir, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you, Connor. This was a blast.
And thank you guys for joining in. Have a wonderful day.
Contact us today to learn how PowerView automation makes everyday living effortless.
Why are housing prices going up so fast in the Spokane area? Hello, I'm Darren Watkins with the Spokane Association of Realtors. It's a simple case of supply and demand. Since 2010, we have seen the number of available homes on the market fall dramatically, from 2,348 in January of 2010 to only 164 per month in 2021. That's a 94% reduction in our housing supply. The result? Housing prices began to climb rapidly in 2015, with a median home price in Spokane County of $179,000. That same home today would cost you $380,000. That is, if you can even find a home to buy.
For the last, I'd say at least 10 to 15 years, I think we've been underbuilding. We've seen this crisis coming, and nothing's being done to fix it.
There are no homes to purchase. When there is a home that comes up that buyers like, you're up against 20 plus other buyers who are making an offer on the same house.
Adding to the crisis, thousands of families are fleeing major West Coast cities such as Seattle, Portland, and Los Angeles. Among the top destinations, Spokane, Washington.
When you talk about an out-of-town buyer, they've sold that home in a coastal market, let's say, a Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, LA, take your pick, for $1.5 million, and they come to Spokane and can replace that thing and be in a nicer home for $500,000.
When there are 20 plus offers on a property that they feel like they don't have a chance. So now they're having to look at homes far lower than they're even qualified for, because they have to compete with cash deals or something that goes so much further over the list price, and it's extremely defeating for clients.
The answer is clear. We need more homes immediately, especially for entry-level workforce housing. Every day that we wait, those costs are just going to keep going up and up.